Hello and good morning. Morning, Perrie.
Morning, Sophie. How's you today? All right?
I'm good. I'm good. Yes, sun is shining, so that's a plus,
Big plus.
definitely. And this is actually a topic that we will come across a lot when we're going out to appointments and we're giving people like hints and tips to, get market ready because this is all about tricky home spaces and kind of turning those challenging areas into those valuable assets because we talk about curb appeal outside, but actually move that inside as well. So we're
Yeah.
going to have a little look and give people hints and tips. And if you are watching this and you have any questions or you want to kind of ask us our thoughts on any of these potential tricky areas, put them in the comments and we will come back to you. But hopefully, as we go throughout this, you will get some great insights because obviously, many homes do have that kind of one tricky spot or maybe a couple. Whether it be that awkward nook or a kind of underused room, maybe your junk
Mhm.
room, or maybe a forgotten space that actually you don't use and it's filled with junk. Everyone should enjoy their home, and it should be enjoyed to how you want it to be as well. But if we are going to market, then actually we need to put our selling hats on, and that's where we come in. We know that we need to make use of every single corner because we want to make the most out of your sale.
Mhm. 100%. And I get that question quite often. And actually, it varies because when we talk about turning challenging areas into valuable assets,
Mhm.
sometimes actually the answer is also to do nothing. So it's quite an interesting topic. I had that situation yesterday, Sophie. I was out with someone and they said, all the rooms look great, but I think in the kitchen really needs redoing. And I was like, there is no value in redoing the kitchen. It's functioning, it works. The people who come along can change it, just a little
Mhm.
bit of decluttering. And we've got
Yep.
great information on decluttering as well, guys, actually, if you're interested in that. And so sometimes actually less is more. So
Yeah.
again, we'll cover that as we go through, which is great. But interesting, it's really great if you are interested in these articles to follow some of the shows that we've done and look at some of the things that are on our website. I was at another client yesterday who I was doing the pre-portal for, and she said, oh, it was so helpful. She said, because the last time you were out, Perrie, we had the Christmas tree up, the gifts were out, everything. So it was quite a while ago that I was out initially to see her, but I was doing the pre-portal yesterday and everything looked so lovely and staged. And I said, oh,
Mhm.
I said, this looks awful posh. And she says, I know. She says, well, actually, I went onto your website and I looked at your decluttering and how to stage your home. And she actually applied all those things and her home looked amazing.
Oh,
So
brilliant.
the tips
Yeah,
do work.
brilliant. Absolutely. And that's what it's all about. I was one that we've currently got live. I was out and valued, and the upper hallway had it's a long one, but had no windows whatsoever, and the walls were painted so dark and then filled with picture frames as well.
Mhm.
And she was painting somewhere else in the house, and I says, look, while you're painting this, I would actually paint this if you've got the paintbrush out anyway.
Yeah.
Let's just paint this to really brighten up. You've got no windows, you've got really dark paint, and then it's full with picture frames. And the property is now live. And when I went back to do the pre-portal, a bit like you, I was like, oh wow, what a
Mhm.
difference. And while it hasn't added value, it has made such a difference to opening up that space. And oh,
Appeal.
it was brilliant and it was worth it. So it's always great when people take on board what we say.
Absolutely. I mean, it all comes down to the right styling. We've said that before, and we're here to help with that and give you some top tips for tricky parts of your home. But your spaces are valuable, and as you say, they're a great asset, but doesn't necessarily add value. But what it does do is attract buyers, which eventually will add value. Um, it's great to improve spaces that you truly love and enjoy in your home as well, and make them stand out as major selling points. I think that's a really major thing as well, because if you like it and it stands out, your buyers are the chances are the buyers will like it, won't they?
Absolutely, definitely. And then who knows, then you can go on to use a space more effectively. And then you might end up doing this and go, well, hang on, I don't need to actually move, actually. It's almost like that love it or list it kind of thing. You're almost doing that. And then
Mm-hmm.
actually, then you come to the decision, do I actually go or do I stay? It's
Mm-hmm.
potentially a win-win situation.
Yeah.
Because then when you take that in mind, we're going to look at narrow hallways, like I've just mentioned, those smaller rooms, potentially if you've got low
Mm-hmm.
ceilings, dark spaces, and also kind of pocket-sized gardens and what we can utilize. Because as I said at the beginning, it's about internally and externally as well. And it is kind of going beyond the usual white paint and mirrors, even though absolutely we're not taking away from that. They do work a treat with all of the above. But instead it's focusing on tips and tricks, a bit like the decluttering video, that opens up the gates to your own personality and style, and then that comes through as well, and people see that.
Yeah, it does, but actually it also shows the space in its best way, so it allows people to then envisage, even if it's not their particular taste, they can envisage the space in their style, which I think is a really important thing, rather than walking in and thinking the space just doesn't work and it won't work for me. So it gives them that open-mindedness, doesn't it?
Absolutely, definitely. And then you never know, you might inspire them to go, oh, actually, I've never thought of that before. And they might end up keeping it because actually they've not seen it before and you've done it so well, and it almost turns into like a Pinterest board because actually they've taken inspiration from it. Who
Exactly.
knows? So then we're going to start with narrow hallways, and that kind of being long, skinny hallways. And they do tend to be a kind of British tradition, but they sometimes do need that helping hand to ease kind of the squeeze of them and become more practical for that modern living. So what would you say, Perrie, are some kind of elegant, we'll say, solutions?
Oh, there's so many of them out there, aren't there? And this particular client that I spoke of earlier, I was at their property yesterday, and actually I didn't even notice it at Christmas because of the Christmas things that were around. But as soon as I went into the hallway, I realised how wide the hallway was, and it was wooden floorings. They had nice long rugs, but then they had narrow pieces of furniture with nice items on top, which really made it accessible space. But actually, they had a really nifty, quite smart little chair just in the corner, and it wasn't a big sofa chair like you would have in your lounge. It was like a kind of almost like a modern office chair with a nice cushion on it. And whilst you might not necessarily use it, you actually went in and you think, oh, what a functioning space. So suddenly a hallway that was quite long, although it wasn't as narrow, it still looked great because of all these little bits that they put in there. So I think the biggest key factor as well, especially if it is a narrow hallway, and we've all seen it, haven't we? We do it in our own homes. You walk in and literally all you see is coats, hats, shoes.
Yeah, they're hitting you in the face as you're trying to get through the door. Yeah.
Exactly. And it's essential because we're living there. Of course we are. But actually, there's a real nifty way you could just, when you're doing your viewings, you're doing your photographs, you're doing the video that we do for you, just pop them all in a box, stick them under a bed or in a closet or something like that, and just move them out that space. You can always bring them out again to live in. But I think coats, hats, scarves, they're all the favourite things that we have lying around, especially at this time of the year. So great to get them out the road, store them away. You want to increase your space. You want to make it feel like a lovely, welcoming hallway as well. So really important that those things aren't there. Again, swapping freestanding hat stands. I know it's not really something that you see in many houses, but actually they have had a little bit of a comeback, and I see it quite often when I go in. You've got them there for the brollies and everything, haven't you? You know, but change those even just for a couple of wall hooks. So you can still use your functioning space, but put them away when events are happening, i.e. viewings, pictures, etc., like I mentioned before. Those hooks, again, even if you've got like benches, putting hooks underneath them is quite a good idea. So you could hang bags, coats, etc., umbrellas under there too. That's always a good thing. Underneath shelving actually is kind of underrated, I think, and actually really provides a great economic use of space. So certainly something to do, and it makes it really stylish. And actually looks like an efficient space as well, because you can put the shoes all in there too, hang the other parts underneath, and it just creates that space rather than just walking in and you see racks and racks of shoes and coats. So definitely something to think about. It'll also give you kind of a natural channel when you come into the house, like you said, Sophie. When you're walking through the property, then as soon as you're coming into the hallway, you're not bouncing off and trying to avoid, because if you're kind of going in the door and you're trying to avoid the coats and everything, then suddenly your instant feeling is, oh, this is small.
Yes.
And you haven't even started walking through the house yet.
Nope.
So again, it's about that first impression, isn't it? We say this, literally within 30 seconds, someone has decided what they're going to do with that house. So if your first few seconds are dodging coats and dodging stands when you first go in a property, it's just a negative emotion, isn't it?
Absolutely. And I think as we go through this, the key word that's kind of ringing through my head is the illusion. We need to think about the illusion that it gives off. And absolutely, we need to give the illusion of bigger spaces, more open spaces. So I think, especially when you said that example of obviously the property and it's having a chair there, while it's not something they would sit, it gives the illusion of a bigger space. And that's what it's all about. Absolutely. Okay.
So again, make sure that you can clear things from obstructions, because again, you don't want to stop people enjoying the hall when they come in. I mean, there's other ways of creating space. You know, you're not necessarily going to remove walls, but you potentially, that one that you mentioned with the photographs, you potentially could just swap that out and put a mirror up there. Again, it's creating an illusion, isn't it, of space and brightness and light. As soon as you switch the light on, you're going to have it bouncing off this mirror, which creates a really great space in that hallway. So again, that's something that's really nice to do. And that, you know, you've just got to work with ideally what works for yourselves, but none of those options in that hallway suggestions that we come up with are expensive either. You know, and the one you said as well, Sophie, about the fact the lady painted the wall, well, that's great, but you know, she may not needed to, but she had the brushes and paint anyway, so that's great. It's not a long job, it's not an expensive job. You could do that in a weekend. And I think if you take that time to prepare the home, it just offers so much more, doesn't it?
Absolutely, absolutely. Because then as well, and it's a wee bit of reverse psychology. Then walking in there, you smell the fresh paint as well, and you go, oh, this is clean. This is newly renovated, actually. So actually, it's also the knock-on effect of that. And again, it's all about the senses. So yes, they can see it's a bigger space, but actually, I'm smelling fresh paint. This is newly renovated. It's all of that element as well, because we don't just see things, we feel things, we smell things, and it's all part of it.
I think as well that it gives off the feeling as well to the viewer, oh, this house is cared for.
Correct.
Whereas if they come in and see a negative thing to begin with, it's the human nature is that, well, what am I next going to see? It's like you just keep looking for that negative thing, don't you? Whereas if you see the positive thing, all of a sudden you're in a really good frame of mind, and then every room you come into suddenly then looks fantastic. But I think however you do it, I think for me, the final smart tip is to keep furnishings to one side as well. If you've got a narrow hallway, because if you've got a piece of furniture on the left and then you've got a piece of furniture on the right, then again, you've got that zigzag dodge furniture thing going on, which makes things look small. So I think just keeping that clear run. And again, if you're fortunate enough to have wooden flooring or laminate, even just having a narrow carpet runner is a really nice thing as well. That client had that yesterday, and it just made it look so much bigger. So it's just that illusion, because you could see the rug, you could see the carpet. So my mind's saying, oh, there's plenty of space in here, because I've got rug and I've got carpet. So it's just about creating that illusion. And it draws the eye away as well from the narrowness of it, and then you enjoy the length of the hallway as well, which really does open it up. A lot of the properties here are designed that way. I was in another property the other day, and it's one of the fourplex flats in Scooney, and they're beautiful big rooms, but they do tend to have narrow hallways, and they are quite long. So again, it's just about how do you create that illusion in that space. So all of these tips really do help with that, don't they? So we've talked about narrow hallways. What if it's actually the rooms that are small, Sophie? What would you recommend people do there?
Okay, so small rooms, and we're going to put it out there. There's absolutely nothing wrong with small rooms. That is part of your property. However, what can we do to actually maximize that space? Yes, it can be the cutest and coziest spot in the home, but if you feel like your style is maybe being cramped, then we have got some wee tips for you. But as we say, there's nothing wrong with those small rooms, but what are we doing to utilize that space? Especially now as well, those small rooms make perfect dressing rooms, home office, studies. You know, is it somewhere where we keep all the kids' toys? Like, yes, that might be a small room, but actually it's got a great function if we utilize the space correctly. So with that, think about shrinking a little. Reduce the, not even just the size, but the amount of furniture as well. If it is a small room and you're walking in, but actually it's just filled with furniture and you can't see any floor space or any wall space, then that kind of puts the proportions off. And with a small room, you will struggle if you are going to have massive furniture in there or too many pieces. So think about reducing the furniture, or the furniture that you do have, reducing the size of it so you don't feel like you're kind of towered over. And then another one, kind of go with the flow. I know you may be thinking, does she mean to say go with the flow? But no, go with the flow. Furniture, think about it again, and it's all about the illusions. But you know, furniture, have it on legs. A lot of furniture these days, because I know the last sofa, you had the option, you can either put on the legs or you can have them off. If it's in a smaller room, go with the legs rather than that kind of solid base, because again, it lifts it up, it allows light to come underneath, and it makes it more open.
It really does open it up.
Absolutely, definitely.
I have a client, that property we have at the moment on Tarva Avenue is a fantastic example of it. So I know we're talking about small rooms, but this is more of a space than a room. But literally, as you go in the stairwell, at the end of the hallway, there's a nook, I would call it, at the side. So it doesn't have walls on it, but actually they've really made a great use of the space because they've almost made it like a reading, relaxing area. So they've got a wall with all the books on. And rather than having big clunky pieces of furniture, exactly what you said there, Sophie, they've put bean bags and soft seats and things like that there. So it looks like a kind of scatter lounge, kind of quite a cool place to hang out. So you can actually make those spaces really welcoming and give someone an idea of, wow, what a great idea. I wouldn't have thought to use this room for that.
Absolutely. I know exactly the one that you're speaking about because they've got the rug as well, which really finishes it off. But yeah, the bean bags, it's a nice, and it is, as you said, it's soft. It's not as harsh on the eye in that kind of space. And then, so yes, you can do that with sofas and armchairs. Think about then your bookcases. Think about if it is a smaller room, but you have a bed in it, you know, rather than maybe kind of your divan or ottoman bed that has that solid base, kind of get one on legs. So again, the light, even if you put things underneath it and use it for storage underneath, just keep a wee bit around the edges so you can still see that light and it gives the illusion of more space. Because the key here is to show off all of that floor space that you do have, because it just adds that roomier feel.
It really does. And see if you're putting a television in here as well. And I hadn't seen this till recently, and I've actually seen it on 3 occasions in the last month now, and I didn't know it was such a thing. But normally have your television, and not all people want to put TVs on walls. They want to put them on a stand, don't they, on a table or set up like that. But actually what I saw in these 3 properties recently was actually tripods that you can put TVs on. So almost like a tripod, yeah, but not like well, I guess, yes, like a camera design, but it wasn't, you know, metal or that. It was actually 3 wooden legs, and the television sat and fixed onto the middle section of it. And it was so fantastic because actually it raised the television, but actually it let your eye flow through the actual unit because it was open legs and they were quite high up. So again, it just didn't feel like it took up all the space in the property, which I thought was great because then you saw the wooden flooring at the bottom, then you saw the little rug, but the TV was still in the room rather than seeing the solid wooden unit that maybe was going to take up half a wall. It was fantastic. I hadn't seen it before. So that's another top tip.
I know I haven't seen that before. And I'm also thinking it's just something on a tripod like this. You then don't have to worry about dusting down your TV cabinet either, because less
Keep it clean.
yes, keep it clean, less surfaces to dust. Perfect. I've not seen that before. That sounds like a great idea, actually.
Very good. I'm quite impressed.
Absolutely. And like you've said there, so you could see through the kind of the legs of the tripod. And that's another key point as well, is what can we do to actually see through it, whether that be glass top tables, whether it be kind of the spindle back dining chairs or open framed kind of shelving units. Again, a bit like the rug element down the corridor, it's about extending that sight line and again amplifying the size and the kind of feel of the room. But don't let this kind of, don't despair that your room is too tiny to tame, because that's absolutely not the case. With a little bit of thought and a few of these clever choices, and again, if you've got any and anybody has any kind of suggestions, hints and tips, feel free to put them in the comments if you don't mind sharing them. But it is about those clever design choices, because any room that's small in size can be big in personality, just like people, and more spacious and stylish.
I would agree.
Absolutely. So then we've done narrow hallways, we've done a kind of smaller room. What about another thing that we do come across then in terms of ceiling height, Perrie, and low ceilings?
Yeah, I mean, low ceilings again can make a room feel really small, can't they? So a lot of the historic homes that we come across, especially if we go to the East Nook, for instance, you've got a lot of the fishermen's cottages. Again, even here in Methil, in Leven areas, you've got a lot of the mining cottages, and they tend to have lower ceilings. So admittedly, part of their charm is there because that's what makes them nice and we like them. But it can add a greater sense of height to any room by maybe just using some little tips and changing things around. Even though sometimes that might sound like a tall order, excuse pun. But you can make some nice changes. So towers of shelves are a really good thing. So again, rather than putting full bone units in, put floating shelves in. I think that's always a really good thing. And you can actually do the towers of shelves as well to ceiling height. A lot of these properties as well have log burners, or they might have the original coal fires. So another really nice thing to do is to do a tower and then put all your logs in it. And so it becomes a feature in the room as well. So I had a client recently who'd done that and had floor to ceiling logs. It wasn't that big. I'd say maybe a foot wide, but it just was a really nice feature in the property. And again, because it was a slim tower, suddenly you were looking at it from the bottom and looking up, and so you felt that there was height there and coming, so it didn't kind of draw in that actually I was closeted in. So that's a really nice way to do it as well. Upright floor lamps as well is a good thing. So if you do upright ones, then obviously the light is shining upwards. So again, it gives you that feeling of additional light, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Slender structured plants as well is always a good thing. So again, maybe a nice yucca plant, something that's slender and tall. So again, it draws your eye with the colour and it pops, but you've got height there rather than having something that's bushy. Because if you've got something that really bushes out and then you've got the low ceiling, then all you're doing is closing everything back in again, aren't you?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Good to create space that way. It just brings again almost like a lofty quality to it as well if you do that type of thing and modernize it. And again, as we said earlier, you've got the kind of beanbag idea is a good thing as well if you've got a small room with a low ceiling. So it's just about playing with it, isn't it? It's all your senses that you're kind of trickery.
Absolutely, absolutely it is. And I think that's a good word as well. Trickery. Yes, that's exactly what we're trying. That's exactly what we're trying to do here, while it's still being. Yes, yes. While it is still your home as well, though.
Exactly. I think floor to ceiling curtains can add the illusion of height as well in a low ceilinged room. So again, that's something to think of. I think that could be quite an attractive thing. But again, it's just about looking at colour as well. If it's a really bright room, then that's great. You can have something nice and light. But again, if it's a dark room, you don't want to have floor to ceiling dark curtains. You're going to have to brighten that up a little bit. So that's something to think about. What you can do as well is even just have long lengths of fabric, which is quite a nice thing. So I've seen a few people doing that recently where they've just then curled it around the pole and let it just hang. So again, it gives an illusion of just that additional space. Vertical stripped wallpaper. I know not everybody is into wallpaper, but actually, if you're going to do that, then vertical strips are great. If you put it across, then you're just going to be making that room feel even smaller, aren't you?
Yes.
But again, don't overdo it with wallpaper. For me, in smaller rooms, I think it's about having a feature wall, isn't it? And a lot of people as well actually have murals now, don't they, where you can get the mural that covers the whole wall. And I've seen that quite recently, especially if it's maybe a children's bedroom or something like that. Again, it really just brings that bedroom to life. And you can do that in bathrooms as well. Again, with that beautiful property along in Anstruther who did that. And although it was quite dark because it was palm trees, on the wall, it actually just gave a really great feel because you had this lovely slick bathroom, but then this big statement wall. So again, it's just about how to maximize that space and be creative with it, but also to do that economically, because at the end of the day, this is about you potentially selling your home. So you don't want to be investing a lot of time, money and effort because there may be a deadline for you. You need to get it marketed quick. So these are all little things that you can do quite quickly, aren't they? And economically.
Absolutely, yeah. As you touched on, it's something you could do in a weekend, even if you get a few friends round, but do it over the weekend, but make it as inexpensive as possible.
Yeah. And then when you're looking at the walls as well, we're talking about wallpaper, but to take that through as well, if you've got interruptions on the wall, so say perhaps you've maybe got picture rails or you've got covings, sometimes those can make that room even smaller. So again, can you maybe remove those, or paint them so that they're the same colours as the walls? You often see the walls are white and then the rails are generally brown, aren't they? So, painting those white would really brighten it up. So again, it's just about thinking about how you could use that space. Reducing the size of skirtings is a thing as well. So, these properties generally will have had high skirtings on them. So potentially you can put a smaller one on there. And again, it just gives that illusion of a bit more space. Paint it in one light colour if you can, or put a light mural wall up, which is always a good thing. I think top to bottom, try and go for smooth surfaces as well. I think if you go for anything with a design or any kind of movement in it, it again almost feels like it's jumping out at you, making that even smaller, doesn't it? Whereas if it's plain and it's sleek, it makes it feel a bit larger as well, doesn't it?
Absolutely, definitely.
But if you're more ambitious than we're suggesting, there are other things you can do. You could take the ceiling out. Nobody wants to do that, of course, but you might be able to do that, or even actually potentially put a skylight in. I was with a client the other day and their property from the kitchen area into the lounge was quite dark. So they were actually talking about putting just a skylight through the wall and also into the ceiling in the kitchen to bring it in. So, you know, that's more economical than removing obviously a whole ceiling, because that involves a lot of work. So there are little tricks and things that you could do there as well, if perhaps you've got a move date that's a longer term plan. So maybe if you're thinking about moving in a year or so, and those little things, and maybe just brighten up that space. But again, it's about making sure that it's economical for you. You don't want to be spending a lot of money that potentially may not have a return. So it's about balancing that out, and we can obviously give you some advice on that if it's something that you're considering doing. But it will give you the illusion of extra height. It'll inject warmth to the room as well, because more daylight is coming in. So if it's sunnier, you've got more sunlight coming in. But, you know, again, if you've got exposed beams and rafters, are they dark? Can you make them lighter? You know, can you repaint them? So again, it's just about those illusions of brightness and roominess that we're trying to create in smaller spaces.
Absolutely. And when you think about, there's a property as well I was recently at, and the bathroom was that just floor to ceiling wood cladding, just and that really dark mahogany wood cladding, and there was actually no window in the bathroom either, and you just felt so sunken in. But actually, just painting that white would make such a difference. It's there. It's and then as well, painting it white as well. That's, while obviously the dark, really dark mahogany cladding is, you know, tends to be more dated, painting it white not only brightens it up, but a lot of people are doing kind of paneling these days and doing that. So actually it would just, even just giving it a lick of white paint would really brighten the space up, freshen it. But that's something you see quite a lot, is that really dark mahogany cladding, and that does kind of make you feel really drawn in, especially when there's no window either. So with that then comes dark spaces. Some rooms just don't get much natural light, whether it be that it isn't a window within that space, or I was at a property in St Andrews, and the bedroom was at the back of the property. It had one window, but because of the way it was positioned on a pend, they had to have frosted glass window because there was somebody looking directly in. So they had one window and it was completely frosted anyway. And window, even if it wasn't, it was onto a pend that had a building right there. So it was just a really, really dark room that doesn't get much natural light. Granted, they put in a sun tunnel, so there was actually a sun tunnel in the corner that was giving off some natural light, but still actually not that much. However, there are plenty of options to kind of lift spirits, if you like, through creating kind of those cherished retreats and those comfortable spaces, and integrating them with brighter spaces. So whether it be explore maybe enlarging the size of the window. Obviously, if you're in maybe a conservation area, then please make sure you're obviously getting your planning and doing it all correctly, and don't just go willy-nilly taking out windows. Please do it properly. I don't want this coming back on us, Perrie, and people saying, well, no. So please maybe just get some expert advice on that one, or potentially even just changing its character as well. Could you try one large pane rather than maybe smaller ones, because that will pull in more light. And think about then the framework. Obviously, in some areas, East Snooker conservation, you have to obviously have the conservation style looking ones with obviously the bars down them. That you can't change that. But if you're not in that kind of area, what can you do in terms of the actual window type? Another thing to think about as well is try kind of borrowing natural light from another source. Putting a glazed panel into a door. If you've just got a solid oak door, is the one that you can change for a glass inlet. Whether it be a full one, whether it be just half height. There's so many different options out on the market, and that's probably something that people don't think of.
It's a really simple fix as well, isn't it? Just to do that. There's so many modern ones out there. It makes such a big difference. We've actually done that in our own home because ours were all solid doors. And although the rooms aren't necessarily small, they did feel that they were quite dark. And we basically modernised them. So we went for oak doors, but you would think, well, hang on, you've just darkened it by putting oak in. But what we've got is a nice curve of glass right in the middle of it that looks into the other rooms. So again, it's created that illusion where you can see through into other rooms, which just makes that room looks so much larger. So we've done it in our lounge and also into our kitchen, and so the hallway is coming into the lounge is going into the kitchen, and vice versa, and it really has opened the space. It makes such a big difference. So that, you're right, that is one way that they can do it. But also, as I mentioned earlier, the actual wall glass as well that people are putting in. I had another client who did that with actually their shower room. So rather than having an enclosed shower room, what they did is they had the beautiful light blue glass blocks, and rather than having the solid wall, they changed the wall to the glass blocks, and it just looked fantastic, and it really brightened the room up. But you could put like a glass panel as well at the top of a ceiling, or maybe in a hallway if your hallway's dark. There's various ways that you can do that really brighten up a room, and generally quite cost effective as well, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. And I can imagine the one with the blue as well, when the light does hit that, that would give off a beautiful like feeling and kind of glow in the room as well.
It
I can
did. It was
imagine.
lovely.
And it is all of those kind of little tips, and absolutely the door is something that people won't think of, but it is a proven trick. And while obviously you mentioned that that client has gone for blue, you also consider just using clear glass, just so that you don't potentially have that block and kind of obscure. But obviously if you're in a bathroom, you don't mind obscuring to kind of maintain that privacy. But there is plenty of options out there. Another one to think about, something that you've already mentioned, but lighting. Play along with kind of lighting, whether it be, obviously an option is for the floor lamps, but also think about lower light levels and kind of go deep in your decor with some kind of dark styling. Think about moody hues and layered textures, and then that kind of gives it that cozy library feel. I was actually at a property that we're selling in East Snook, and it's across 3 levels, and I walked onto the second level into the sitting room, and the feeling that I got when I walked into this room, it was a dark, but they had purposely done it dark. And as soon as I walked in, with the way that the carpet was, it was a tartan carpet that was dark. The walls were dark. The furniture was chunky. It was dark, but it was done perfectly. The log burner. When I walked in, I felt like I'd walked into like a country pub in Pitlochry or something.
Yeah.
I just wanted to sit there with the fire on. He had whiskey behind, and I thought, this is perfect. So while we're giving all these hints and tips to brighten the space and make it feel better, if the room can allow and you do it correctly, it can be absolutely stunning and give a beautiful feel.
A lovely little nook, especially if it's a cold day and you're walking into that room. It's just going to make you feel so welcome, isn't it?
Absolutely. So whatever your approach is, from brightening things up to potentially leaning to that darker side, there's always potential to embrace and transform those underused spaces into ones that you will love to linger in. And this is what I was saying, you could go and do this and then actually go, I'm just going to stay. You never know. Yeah. Now, I feel like the next kind of one to look at is perfect for you, Perrie, because I think between the two of us, you're definitely more of a keen gardener than I am. So
I'm a garden person.
This one's perfect for you.
Absolutely. Pocket-sized gardens, they don't need to be dull spaces. You can absolutely, outdoor space is gold dust, no matter where we are, isn't it? And whether you've got small, whether it's sunny or shady, treat it as the perfect opportunity to extend your living area, and foster a deeper connection as well with nature in your garden. You're absolutely right, Sophie. I've done it with my kitchen. So, I've got a lovely decked area outside. Last summer, we spent all summer doing the gardening up. And it literally is, I've made little areas within the garden that are like additional rooms, if you like. And if you've got a court garden as well, say, or a small grassed area, it's really great that you can do that. And it's about bringing all that colour right to the door of the property as well. So if the area is at the back of the house, it's great if you're looking through your windows and you're seeing the colour popping with the flowers, etc. So whether it's grassed, it's decked, maybe you've got gravel, you've maybe got pavement, in regards to very varied varieties you might have chosen. Nice walkways, you can do single areas that cover entire spaces and surfaces, that you can make them feel so much larger just by changing them and dressing them up a little bit. For me, we're coming into the great season as well for doing that. So you've got lots of colour just now. I've just been and got all my petunias and pansies, so I'll be doing that next week. But at the moment, they're just sitting in the pots I've purchased them in on the deck, waiting to be done. But even when I walk past the window and I'm seeing them, I'm thinking, oh, that's going to look lovely when I do it. So I think that flowers and foliage make a big difference. It's great to add those to your garden. I'm all about the furniture as well. So again, You get these lovely Hessian mats that you could put down that almost look like outside rugs. You've got nice seating arrangements, lots of different colours of pots and flowers. So there's so many ways that you can dress it up, as I say, to bring that seasonal flowers and all these colours into their garden. Solid furniture is usually more comfortable and beautiful than fold-up kinds, I feel. The fold-up kinds tend to look flimsy, so it's good if you've got something solid that can be there all year round, that you can be changing all the time in regards to what you do with it. So by that I'm meaning you've got nice throws, you've got cushions, you've got your little table, you've got your little pots on there. It just brings a whole extension to the property and gives you that additional room, doesn't it? Which I think is a real good addition.
Oh, absolutely, definitely. And I'm picturing it now, and I'm a little bit jealous, I'm not going to lie.
So it is about getting some nice seating. It is about getting good quality of chairs. You know, you can get bistro sets that are great as well. So that's just your little table with 2 little seats. So you don't have to have like this whole big arrangement that sits a family of 10. You know, you can have literally just a small thing that looks great. And I think, again, if you live near the coast, which a lot of our people will, and we've got all these beautiful beaches and areas that we can go to down to the harbours, etc. On your outside space as well, it's good to kind of bring that into it. So pebbles, and you've got obviously all the shingle, you've got the glass, all these things that you can kind of bring into your garden to make it almost feel like an extension of the seaside area that potentially you live in. It's always a great thing. And if you're country, you can then bring all your green into that. You can bring all your harvesty looks into that as well. So I think that's a really good way to do it. I think, again, if you've got a small space, you've got to trim back all the unruly things. A client the other day was asking, you know, what should I do with my garden? I said, well, the garden's beautiful, but actually what I would do with the fencing, because they had a wisteria that had grown over the fence, and it did look like it was hiding the fence and made the garden look smaller. I said I would trim all of that back and maybe just plant some fresh ones, and then it'll give you maybe another foot and a half in the garden, which doesn't sound a lot, but actually if you're working in that small space, it really brightens it up and will freshen it up and make it feel bigger. One of the things I also did last year as well is you get lots of outside mirrors now. So again, they create a great illusion of space as well. So I think having mirrors on walls or fencing is a really great thing as well, just to give you an additional pop of room and space. But also actually even light, because you know you may not get a lot of sunshine in the garden, depending on how you're positioned. But if you've got these mirrors and the light's bouncing off it, then it's just illuminating that whole space. So I think that's a really good way to do it as well. So you're trimming back things, you're tidying up trestles, you can put some nice trestles with some nice climbers on that don't look too busy, and that's always a nice thing to do. On dark or dull walls, again, it's just a way of really improving it and making it feel lighter. I think that really works. You get lots of outside artwork now as well. I'm into things with robins on at the moment. You know, you get sundials, you get all sorts of things. So I think those things really brighten up a garden as well. So artwork, climbing flowers or plants are a great thing. Paint scruffy fences, that's a big thing for me. What a difference it makes if you just give the fence a coat of paint, or if it's decking you've got, just freshen it up and give it a real burst of colour. Makes a real big difference. Grey and black's the big thing at the moment, so that looks really nice in a garden, because say you painted the decking black or grey, then you get a nice mustard outside rug, and then you've got some lovely colour of plants, pinks and greens, all boosting on your tables along with your little 2-seater sofas, etc. You really can make it look a lovely space. So I would definitely do that. And I think if you do that in light, pretty colours, I know I've talked about greys as well there, but you can actually, I've seen yellow, I've seen pink, there's lovely blue colours out there just now as well. So there's many ways that you can brighten it up if you don't have a lot of space, and not that expensive, because we're talking about pocket-sized gardens here and how to make them look more spacious. So great way to do that. I think it just allows you as well to relax outdoors. Enjoy the view from the windows, as I've said. So anybody that's coming to view your property, when they're looking out, they're thinking, oh, that's lovely, I like that. And it's another positive emotion you're creating about your house. Turning your pocket-sized garden or balcony into a little gem that you can savour whilst you're living there, but also actually, as I say, it gives you that additional room outside. It really does become a valuable asset to anybody that's looking to potentially purchase that property.
It is. It's the curb appeal. Absolutely. So
absolutely.
Valuable, definitely.
So I'll need to teach you on the old garden tricks now then, Sophie.
You know what? I'm thinking after this show's ended, we're going to see like everybody driving to B&M and Dunelm this afternoon, and they're going to be pottering around all weekend. Everybody's going to be in the garden because of all these reasons and tips.
You make a really good point, actually, because it doesn't need to be expensive. You know, you can
No.
go to Home Bargains, you can go to B&M's. You don't need to be spending a lot of money. You could, spend £20 and make your garden beautiful. So again, it is just about just those little things that will make the difference, and just brighten up that pocket-sized space.
Definitely. So, as I say, hopefully that's given you inspiration for the weekend, and you'll be busy this weekend if you've just watched this. We're here to help, obviously.
Jockey, just letting everybody know that he's here as well.
Perfect. There we go. That he's wanting to give his wee 2p. So hopefully then that's given everybody some great insights into really optimizing every corner of your home, internally and externally, to, release the highest possible value. As we've mentioned throughout, if you do have any suggestions, any hints and tips or questions, put them in the comments. We'll come back to you. If you want to message us privately, then that's totally fine as well. But that's been a great wee show for the weekend.
Absolutely. So we've given you lots of inspiration to pop off to B&Q and get what you need to get. But again, if you want to read more about it, as Sophie said, the link's in this post. You can read the full article. If you've not been able to watch us live, you can go back and do that. But please do reach out. We have had our sellers that are using these tips, and it is making a big difference to their lives. That's what we're here to do. We're here to help.
Absolutely. That's perfect. Thanks, Perrie.
Thank you, Sophie. Welcome. Everyone have a great weekend.
Yeah. Take care. Bye for now.
Bye-bye.